Hi there, my name is Teni Brant, and welcome to Speak Dicely, the podcast where I get together with other tabletop enthusiasts and we speak dicely together. Already stuttering over my words. You know what? That's staying in. It's fine. I've previously mentioned that the Player's Handbook doesn't offer much in guidance in the way of how to roleplay. And I think this is because people tend to find a personal way to make roleplay work for them. But I'm curious to hear the perspective of some folks who are not only role players, but also professional actors. So joining me today are Jesse Beam, Dallis Mackenzie, and Ryan Worthing. Hey guys.
Oh.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
Oh, I'm not, just recording a podcast. How's everybody?
Recording a podcast?
Oh, we're doing good.
Whoa.
Huh?
Nice. Me too.
What?
Welcome to the world stage.
I was going to say, Teni, I got to say, professional actor is a very generous way to describe me. So thank you.
Well, I mean,
I feel the same way.
Well, to be fair, I've been told the definition of a professional is somebody who has been paid for something. And I imagine at this point you've all been paid to act, so you hit the bill.
Fair enough. I guess so.
I wouldn't call my acting professional quality, but
I know most of us wouldn't consider ourselves professionals, but by that definition, just let me do you guys the favor, okay?
I really appreciate it.
So, so these are more people I know. I've role played with all of you, and you're all fantastic role players, I should add. Tell us a bit about you guys. Like, what is it that you're passionate about? Because in the past, I've asked people like what they do, but I'm trying to change that question around because people don't always identify themselves by what they do. Because some people don't enjoy their jobs, but I want to know.
These days, people aren't doing anything.
Well, that's exactly right too. But I want to know what you guys love. Perhaps we'll start with Dallis.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I love a lot of things. I don't think we have time to get into all the things I love. Right now, my daylight hours are spent. I work in business operations from 9 to 5, and then my evenings are spent making silly noises into a microphone. So, business analyst by day, voice actor by night, D&D enthusiast always.
Jesse?
Hi, Jesse here. I'm a former host for YTV's The Zone, where I spent 3 years traveling all over Canada doing that. Been an actor since I was 8, mostly working in children's theater, and I also voice act for cartoons. I recently did a stint on TVO, and I came to D&D kind of late in my life compared to everyone else that I played with. I didn't start until about 2 or 3 years ago, but just absolutely fell in love with it and devoured everything that could be about this game. So that's what brings me here today.
I'm surprised to hear that you started so late because I've been to your place and you have a lot of merchandise.
That's that YTV paycheck, buddy. That's why I live in a dump, because I spent all my money on miniatures.
I can attest to that. And how about you, Ryan?
Me personally? Well, I'm really passionate about acting. I've been trying to get into that for a long time. I was in it for a bit, doing some work there, but I've been trying to break into voice acting recently, but then, everything shut down. What else? Really big into tabletop RPGs. I got into them in university. Because my first year of university, there was a strike. And basically one day I just couldn't find my friends, and then I found them. They were all playing D&D, and I was like, why are you all sitting around a table during a power outage during a strike with candles lit? And there you go. So
join us, Ryan.
Join us. And really passionate just about art in general, whether it be acting, dance, painting, sculpture, you name it. I love watching all of it, listening to all of it, whatever it is. I want to consume it to just expand my horizons and whatnot.
You know what? That
I love that.
That introduction into your experience with D&D makes a lot of sense as to how you ended up in Call of Cthulhu, because it basically sounds like you found a satanic cult.
I guess. You can blame our mutual friend Nick.
Admit that was probably what you first thought when you saw them all sitting around, right? What is this, a seance?
You are absolutely correct, sir.
Oh, Ryan, Dallas, and myself, we all went to York. So I'm sure we're all familiar with the strikes that kept happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
There
were so many.
Plenty of times for board games and D&D. So the reason I brought you guys in here today is because on a previous episode, myself, Christy Clow, and Anthony Saul, we discussed a bit more about roleplay. But with your guys' specific perception of roleplay, based on the fact that you also act, I kind of want to hear your side of what roleplay means to you. But before we get to that, I want to know, well, Ryan kind of already answered this question, but I want to know when you guys, actually, now that I think about it, I think almost all of you touched on this except for Dallas. So, but
I didn't answer it.
feel free to
I can elaborate some more.
Yeah. So when did you get into tabletop role-playing games? And tell us a bit about that story. We'll start with Dallas again.
Cool. Yeah. D&D was the first TTRPG I played. And I played, my very first time was in university. It was my first year of university with Logan and Christy, who I think both have been on previous podcasts by this point, by the time this comes out,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you're all familiar with Logan and Christy. And yeah, I think I don't remember it going very well. I don't think any of us really knew what we were doing. I just remember Christy attempting to befriend some wolves and it not going very well. That's my my entry into D&D. And then we got better and we played a lot more and we got a lot better at it. We decided that befriending wolves is maybe not the best choice. Probably an encounter, in fact.
Oh, yeah. I find a lot of new players tend to try and befriend animals. And unfortunately, I think a lot of DMs will shut that down real quick.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
It's a fantasy world with spells. Why can't you befriend an animal?
Why can't I befriend
That's
wolves?
true.
I like
Yeah.
to do things in games that I can't do in real life, like, friends and interact with people.
Oh, yeah. Oh. Ah.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
gonna
me
get
too.
self-deprecating. It's gonna get self-deprecating.
I wouldn't even call that
Ouch.
self-deprecating. I would just call it depressing.
Sad.
Well, Jesse, perhaps you can elaborate a bit more
My
on your
turn.
story. Yeah.
It's a whole saga, really. I was working at YTV at the time. Had always been into RPG video games, Elder Scrolls, that sort of vibe. And our sound guy Jody had just gotten the SNES Classic. I think it was the SNES, the one with Mario RPG on it.
Mm-hmm.
So he was bringing it in, and we were playing his NES during all of our lunch breaks. And Drew, our director, and I are talking about RPGs, and we were talking about the tropes involved in leveling up, and we were just shooting the shit. And it sort of led the conversation to tabletop role playing. And I said to him, I've always wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons because I feel like I would really enjoy it as an actor and as a fantasy fan. But I've never had a group to play with or someone who knew the rules to teach me. And his face just exploded in glee. He was like, I've been trying to put together a group for a year and I was missing just one person. Oh my God. And then next week I joined his group and we're still playing that same game, even through COVID. The world's longest campaign.
How long is that?
This was, I guess, 3 years ago.
Whoa.
Wow.
And my barbarian's only level 10.
Oh.
What?
Well, we don't play as often as we could. And he had a kid and there was a whole, anyway. So yeah, it was a group of people from work that we started playing. And then I ended up introducing it to all of my friends. And I just said to them hey, I've been playing this D&D thing. I think you guys would enjoy it. And they're like, yeah, cool. Who's going to DM? And they all looked at me and I was like, I guess I DM now. So I kind of got thrown face first into both playing and DMing at the same time. I really didn't have experience with either before I did it. And now it's most of my life. So
Mm-hmm. Those long running campaigns, they I think they tend to worm their way into the hearts of the players. As Ryan had played in the game with me, and I think we only did 21 sessions of this campaign, but it was over the span of 3 years as well. And Ryan joined about maybe 2/3 into the campaign. He kind of got added on.
We're on session. He keeps track. I think we're in the mid 60s.
Wow.
So that's actually
pretty
something that
good.
we can talk about later when we're talking character, because I have some thoughts on when you're role playing a character for that long. How do you keep it interesting? How do you keep it fresh?
Yeah, it's fair.
Mhm.
Right.
Ryan, do you want to go further into detail about your satanic experience?
I happily will, because it's guess what my
How many demons did you summon?
no guess. Okay, I want you all to guess. Guess what my first session was. It's a module. Guess what my first session was.
Strahd.
Oh, okay.
Is it a 5th edition module, or
It
we
has
talking
been
early?
converted to 5th edition. Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
Uh,
it's the oh dear, why am I losing it? Tomb of Horrors?
Correct. My
Ah.
first D&D session was
Oh.
in the Tomb of Horrors, and not only was it in the Tomb of Horrors, it was in a Tomb of Horrors that the DM actually homebrewed with his own traps. So it was a nightmare. But it was
Three Gygax
amazing.
would be
So,
proud.
it was what it was. So when I walked in on them playing in their candlelit cult game, I was immediately like, wow, I want to watch. This looks so cool. I saw the dice and I saw the minis. They had a battle map. And I was like, wow, this looks so cool. So I sat down and then I watched them play for like 4 hours. And I was like, guys, can I join the next game that you have? And they said, yeah, absolutely. Next open game we have is a one shot that another friend of mine named Lee is running. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, I'm in. So this was 4th edition at the time. And God, that system is like so in depth, so many numbers. But basically, I played Tomb of Horrors. Everybody died. I made it out, but then I died because the tomb was full of poisonous gas.
How
But I
long before you
technically made it.
died? How long did your first character last? That's what I want to know.
Oh, in the Tomb of Horrors, I actually made it through the entire session. It was like all night.
Wow.
It was a very long session, but I technically didn't live because the gas killed me after the dungeon.
Oh, not
But
the
Mm.
sphere of annihilation?
no, actually, I didn't make
Oh.
it that deep. we didn't
It's
make.
my favorite
We
because it's
didn't
just a hole in the wall, and it's like if you put your face in there, you're dead.
What happened was we all went in, and then like I think there were 7 of us, and 6 of us all died before like halfway, and then I was like, I'm leaving, goodbye. So then I had my character walk
Nope.
his way out, and then he died after.
No reward is worth this.
Basically, yeah.
Practical.
I've played D&D for so long, and yet I've never experienced the Tomb of Horrors myself. So one of
Oh,
these
me
days,
neither.
hopefully that might have
I-
to be.
Have a brilliant idea for us all to play Tomb of Horrors.
I
Well-
have my thoughts on it. If you want to talk about those, I can. I would love to give you my mixed opinions on the Tomb of Horrors as an adventure, but
You know what?
if you want
I
to talk
get
about that,
the
we can.
inkling. I get the inkling that at some point, Ryan, you're going to come back on this podcast to talk with me about horror.
Oh, I would love to.
Just horror.
I would love to.
I-
I love horror so much.
And I'm a big old chicken, so there's very little I can contribute on the subject.
I ran the tomb, and it was a complete horror.
No matter how many times I hear somebody's intro into tabletop role playing games, I love everybody's stories. It's always so different, so interesting. But so I'm gonna focus this in a bit on what you guys have in common. I want to know, as people with an acting background, do you think of role play?
You can call us professional actors. It's okay.
Oh, my apologies.
I think we decided we preferred that term. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you
Yeah.
guys came around on that. So,
Nothing has ever made me feel more like a professional actor than you calling me one.
All those years of throwing chickens at rubber targets is just starting to pay off. I told you, I used to work for YTV. That's what we did.
That does sound a lot
Fantastic.
like theater school. So I really got right with that one. So, as individuals
Sorry.
who are professional actors, Uh,
There we go.
do you
Yes, thank you.
think of role play as something different from acting? And if so, what are those differences? And if not, I don't know. Let's just elaborate on what you guys think about role play as actors.
I would pipe in just to say that I don't consider it any different, really. Um, I don't know if it's because I've been acting since I was a child. It's like so much a part of my hobbies, just like goofing off with friends. I'm always creating characters and scenarios and writing them down. And so really D&D to me was just like a logical next step. Because the way I see it is I'm taking events that are not real, I'm pretending they are and responding to them as truthfully as I think a character would, which is acting. So that's my answer.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Yeah, I could agree with that. Absolutely.
It's definitely acting, but it's very different than like acting for a client, right? It's definitely not the same as like acting as a job. Because in this case, it's almost more like improv, but it's also like different from improv because improv is very like temporary where, you come up with a character on the fly and you just you make that work. Um D&D is kind of like the best kind of acting, I feel like, because you have like your own character that you know so well and you get to hold on to for so long and you get to make all the decisions for that character. Yeah, I feel like it's
Until they
definitely
die in Tomb
acting
of Horrors.
until they die in Tomb of Horrors. Yeah, definitely acting, but it's
Yes.
different than like what I do sitting here in this booth for sure.
I would say that what
Yeah.
I found the most similar is actually when I'm dungeon mastering, coming up with all those characters on the fly to what you said. They walk into the shop and I'm like, oh darn, I haven't thought of who this shopkeeper is. I better come up with someone.
Yeah, that's so much fun. I love doing that as a DM. I would say, me personally, I when I play D&D, I it depends on the group I play with, of course. Because like not everybody wants to sit through. If everybody's just chilling, if you're playing like a pretty beer and pretzels kind of game, not everybody's wanting to get as invested. But if you've got a group of people that all want to get really invested, um, then yeah, absolutely. I think it's an opportunity that you can use to practice, and play a character that you probably would never get cast as, which I think is a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's
I
true
think
as well. It gives
that's a
you that,
great point. Yeah.
yeah, that opportunity to like play that character you've always wanted to play, but just like haven't nailed that role yet.
That's why I find like as a voice actor, it's so similar, right? Because I'm
Mhm.
not gonna get cast as the 6 foot tall raging barbarian. I'm just not. But I can be that character's voice.
Yep, yeah. You
Yep.
you don't have to worry about typecasting in Dungeons and Dragons because you're the casting director.
Exactly.
Yeah, and when I DM, I like to experiment with voice acting a bit, coming up with wacky voices for certain characters.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
best part.
How often when you guys play a character do you like do you always choose to do a voice or do you find your pattern is more commonly to do a character whose voice is only slightly different from yours?
Well, I mean, I would kind of turn that around and say not every vocal choice is necessarily doing a voice, which I mean,
Mhm.
no, I'm gonna do this weird kind of accent, or I'm gonna do this sort of like, yeah, that's a voice. But a voice can also just be choices you make in your words and the pauses that you might take that you yourself don't take. So my barbarian character, for example, speaks in my natural voice, but his word choice and his rhythms and the pace at which he goes is very different from who Jesse is in his day-to-day life. So I consider it a voice, even though if you just heard a few seconds of the character talking, you'd be like, well, that's just Jesse using his own voice, even though it's not.
Yeah, yeah, tempo and rhythm play a huge role in creating a character. Like even if I use my normal voice, changing tempo and rhythm makes it a completely different human.
100%. Yeah, I agree with both of you. I feel like a lot of my characters are very like grounded in reality most of the time, and in that case it doesn't make a lot of sense to do like a crazy wacky cartoon voice. So a lot of my characters do tend to end up with, like you were saying, like very similar voices to mine, but I agree as well where it's, maybe a slightly deeper pitch or different pace. I definitely feel like I'm doing a voice for every character I play.
I save the weird cartoony stuff again for my DMing because I find that
Right.
giving a really out there voice helps the players go, yeah, let's go visit that one guy. He had the voice that was like or it even helps me remember when I
Yeah.
write down on the paper, just because then a year later they go back and talk to him. I'm like, who the heck was this guy again?
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to consider if you're choosing a voice for your character. I would sort of, I guess, caution that remember you're going to be talking as this character for a while, and making different
That's what I was about to say.
choices as the character. So pick something that you're not going to get sick of.
And that you can sustain and not hurt your voice by doing it
Yeah.
for a full 5-hour session.
Mhm.
I have had players who sort of picked, like I had one friend was playing this bard that was essentially just a cat version of Rick Astley. And I was like, oh,
Yep.
okay. And it was a Halloween one shot, so like I don't care. Joke characters are fine. But the voice he chose was so out there that by the end of the night, he was just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm like, yeah, what did I tell you?
Oh.
You said you were never gonna give him up, eh? But you did.
Yep.
Well, and that's a big commonality with voice acting as well, because like if you're going in for a job and you're getting cast and you do a voice that you're not going to be able to upkeep, and the casting director goes, oh, that's a good one, you're fucked.
I made that
Yes.
mistake with my last gig with TVO. I was playing a rock star that was a literal talking rock, and his voice was like this. And
Oh
then by the-
no.
Oh.
Which during the audition, they were like, yeah, it's great. We love it. And then I came out after the first recording session. I was just like,
Uh-oh.
So
Oh,
your warm-ups, kids.
you're going to end up like Steve
Yeah.
Tyler.
Yeah.
Oh, and I mean, if I had his money, fine. But
Yeah.
Michael Rooker.
I'd prefer to be Michael Rooker, actually.
And there's kind of touching on the point you were going across with having to longevity, in the sense that as a player you're going to be that single character and doing it over that voice over and over. DMs definitely have a lot more room to have fun with that kind of thing, because like you were saying, Jesse, you can throw a crazy voice on this person and they might not come back for a few sessions. So
Well, that's my secret. If the voice is too hard, I just kill that NPC off. I'm the boss. I can do whatever I want.
fair point.
That works, man.
Oh my goodness. I've played in games that have been much more casual, much more silly. And I find myself, I have a difficult time enjoying those as much as I do a very story-based game. Do you guys find, as actors as well, that you have a hard time turning down role play to enjoy, like Ryan was saying, a beer and pretzels kind of game?
I do. That's like my main kind of D&D. Like I really like story focused, character focused sort of games. But I will not lie, I do love the occasional romp of beer and pretzels. Let's go into a dungeon, kill a big monster, have a good time. But it's not my mainstay. My favorite pillar of the game experience is the character interaction, for sure.
Some of my favorite games have been games where not a single die was rolled all night.
Oh yeah, same here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I just thought that was an interesting thing, because like there have been, and I mean, if you're starting out, it's more likely to be less story based, and I've taught a lot of players and have been present for first time DMs, so I've seen a lot of these games, and I've been like, I'm happy for you, but God, am I just the rule book right now?
I would say that
Yeah.
I've lucked out in most of the games I've played, either that I've run or I've had my DM Drew run for me. That everyone at the table kind of, they gel really well socially, either because we were work friends or real life friends first. And so we tend to have a very good mix of actually both of those styles, let's say, at the same table, where we can go defeat the evil vampire that has cursed my family for generations and save my grandfather's soul. But in the very same session, we had this running joke where this guy had a face that was literally a crossbow. And it just started from like the way Drew was describing this character. It's like, so the ranger walks up to you. He's got a crossbow on his back and he's got a crossbow on each hip. And then Mark was like, and his hands are crossbows and his legs are crossbows. And then like, it wasn't, obviously the character didn't have that, but it became so funny that anytime that character showed up, we'd be like, which of his crossbows are looking me in the eye? And I don't know. I think it's just, there's a good mix of, out of character joking around keeps it fun and entertaining and just like hanging out with your friends. But when you're in character, it's like events that are happening to the characters are very serious. But I can still joke about the fact that my barbarian's about to die because he's getting, ear tentacled by a beholder or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah,
I had to come up with a PG way to say that.
yeah, you don't even have to. We all know what you meant. Yeah, players and prospective players and prospective DMs, look up Mind Flare. You will find some tentacle stuff.
Mind Flare, that's what I meant, not beholder. I'm an idiot.
Or maybe don't look
Yeah,
it up.
Mind Flayers, they touch on a very interesting piece of body horror in the game that not many things do. If you read up on them, you're probably gonna be a little bit freaked out.
They're a great monster to
Yeah.
throw in a game.
Oh, they're fantastic.
Yeah, I guess to answer your question, I prefer the role play heavy stuff, but I do like a good out of character joking around while that's happening, just to lighten the tension every so often,
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
agree with that too.
That's
ahead,
half the fun of D&D is that, it's you can be like serious actor and then like throw it all away a second later.
Mm.
Yeah.
And some of the best character moments that we've had between NPCs are NPCs that are like half joke characters to even begin with.
Uh-huh.
My DM has this gnome wizard that is like the only wizard in this entire town that our party is mostly based in. But the whole joke is that like he doesn't really interact properly with people because he got his mind addled by like an ancient magic artifact. So anytime we go to him for advice, he's like, and he's speaking like complete gibberish. And the whole like point of the social interaction is to try and decipher what he's saying. So like on the surface, it's a completely ridiculous character. Then we start to explore his backstory and how his brother tried to save his brain as it was deteriorating, and the choices that character made that led to what happened to him happening. And it's actually quite dramatic and exciting, even though the character itself is kind of ridiculous.
Mhm. Yeah, I do love the being serious for 1 minute and then like tossing in a joke, afterwards to sort of lighten the mood in a game. But there's one thing that I will have to put my foot down on at my table, because I'm a DM who runs horror games. Well, not horror, but I do run Cthulhu. But when I play D&D, I like my bad guys to be scary. I like to play a good villain. It's so much fun. So like for me, when something really not good is happening, if I'm running a horror game like I am with Cthulhu, I need the players to be like in it, because like if the whole point of that engine is to scare people, and you can't be afraid if you're always cracking jokes, because then you're just missing out on like 90% of that game.
But do you think that comes down to being able to read the room and read the table?
I do, but I think it also comes down to setting the expectations as a DM. Because like I think that's my secret weapon as a DM. Set the expectations right away. I'm like, hey guys, this is a horror game, and I'm gonna be scaring you guys. And if you're okay with that, fantastic. You're gonna love this game. But if you're gonna sign up to play this, you need to be okay with that. And if you're not, that's perfectly okay. Like, it's totally fine. I'll be running a D&D game later. We can play together. It's cool. But it's just in Cthulhu, I need to scare you, because it's like it's a horror game. Like, if you played a horror game like a video game and it didn't scare you, you'd be like, a stupid game. Like, you wouldn't really enjoy it. Even in an engine like D&D that is very much so like the players are these, once you hit level 6, these unstoppable killing machines. Like even in a game like D&D, you may not be able to scare them with the monsters. And like I wouldn't recommend running horror in D&D, but like you can have a cool villain or a terrifying villain, or something that you want the players to respect or even to point fear. Yeah, and I just think pay if you want someone to be afraid of something, or respect a character that you've created for them, then because you're going to respect their characters, right? As a DM, you have to. You have to.
Mhm.
So I would ask in kind that the players respect my character, which is the villain in that case. Anyways, that's my 2 cents.
Villain is everything.
I'm gonna slink away into the abyss now.
Be gone.
He's been banished. Dallas, do you have any thoughts to add to all this?
I think like going back to your original question, I feel like we've gone off tangent here, but I think you were originally talking about like what kind of games like when you aren't really a role play heavy group. And I was just thinking like for me personally, I don't even know if I would really want to play that game very much. I think I would sit in for a session, realize that we're very fighting based, and probably politely remove myself from that. But I think if you're a person who finds yourself in that situation, you can still find a lot of like acting moments like internally. I find a lot of my characters have like very internal like struggles that I just like play myself in my own head where like something's happening and I know how she might feel about this thing, but she's maybe, not very like out there, so the other players may never know like all these beautiful storylines that are happening in my head. So my point is that even if you find yourself in a situation where the other players maybe aren't so into role playing, you can still practice your own like improv and your own acting and your own feeling in that situation.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I understand like the value of a more casual game like this beer and pretzels style. Like we got 5 people together tonight. No, we happen to not be busy. Everyone roll characters up in 10 minutes. Let's have a gahuff. Like I understand the value of that is just to do a thing, to have a fun night. And like Jesse was saying about this hilarious crossbow joke, some of the greatest jokes can come out of game sessions like this. But I'm in agreement with the group here in that I don't particularly enjoy those as much, but I don't mind spending a night doing a one-off like that.
I would even say I don't even know that I've played a game explicitly in that
I would agree,
style. Like even the one shots that I've either ran or played in have had enough story hook, intrigue, and character based moments that even though we knew it was like a one night and done thing, there's a game that I played with a friend of mine, I would say like 2 years ago, that we still talk about today. And we only played 2 sessions and then the story was done. But it was so gripping and everyone at the table was just clicking with each other. It was like, I mean, we're all actors. It's like when you get off stage after doing that scene and it's like, everybody was just so electric. It was just this magical thing. So
yeah,
I don't know where I'm going with this tangent, but
I totally agree. I was thinking of Denny. You and I played in a game that Nikki designed. Again, I think she's been on your podcast by this point, but that she designed for Matt. That was a one-off, and it was like an Animal Crossing themed one-off, and it was so silly. And I played like an Australian emu, and it was just like insane. And it was a one-off, but it was like again, like even though it was just super silly and there was no like real point to it, I still managed to like find a character, find some character traits, and like was able to play them up. And everyone did. Everyone had like really fun, silly, like one-off characters.
And I got to guest appear as Tom Nook, but I was the boss and I died in 2 rounds.
Oh,
as you should.
That's okay.
Rip Tom Nook.
I had lackeys. And also I mentioned earlier, like I've played in one-off games with DMs who played for the first time and it just felt like the rules book. That's not one of those games. Nikki did a fantastic job and she had great story for her game.
No. So you all already know about it. All of my stories are already told by people who've already been on this podcast.
That's all right. It's nice to see like who knows who, like, and somebody's going to be out there like sometime in the future being like, oh, the Speak Nicely podcast. Let's get the yarn and see who's connected to who. And then we'll all get big and everyone will know where we came from.
I mean, big.
We're already professional actors, so
Yeah.
How much bigger can I get? Really?
I'm a fly on the wall.
I suppose my ego could get bigger.
But... so moving on to kind of about your guys' approach to characters. Firstly, I want to hear what you guys have to say about how you play a character.
That's quite the question there, sir.
Yeah.
How do I play a character? Okay. I guess do we want to start with creation? I don't know how far back do we go.
Sure,
whatever your heart desires.
At the beginning of time.
I was initially thinking about posing this as more of a like, do you approach a character more based on story concept, or do you find a mechanic that you think would be fun and you just kind of want to try that kind of character and then build the story?
Quite honestly, I find myself being rather spontaneous with this because it turns out to be all of those. Sometimes because it depends on what stage I'm at with the game. Like when I was first learning the game, I was like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I could have like 2 light crossbows and like just shoot
And your
people
face
with
is a
my
crossbow.
yeah, man. And then I mechanically figured out how to make that work and I was like, wow, that seems so cool. And then I said, okay, let's make a character around this. And then I've had other times where it's like, man, wouldn't it be cool if I played like someone who was looking to run a town at some point, like completely retire from adventuring? But he's traveling the world to learn about different countries and their sort of way of running things. So that's his reason for adventuring. And he's traveling with a group to not only see the world, but do his best to, while he's helping different civilizations solve their problems, he's also forming future alliances. That was an idea I had for a character. So then I was like, okay, let's build this character. And then I was like, okay, then I'll decide the class. And then other times I'm like, you know what? I haven't played barbarian before, so I'm gonna play barbarian. And then I build a character around it. I don't know. That's how I start. But when it actually comes down to playing it, I treat it like I would any character on stage. Although thankfully, with D&D, I have time to think about this character a lot, and like in and out of game. And when there's a conversation going down, I can say, how would this character respond to this sort of conversation? I don't know if you've watched Critical Role and you watch Tallis and Jaffe specifically, you will see he takes moments in the middle of roleplay to make sure he phrases his sentences the way his characters would. If he doesn't quite have it, he'll take a moment and just really like, okay, how would he say this? Like I try to get really down to it. And then in terms of how my character feels about things, I think about that constantly as the game goes on. Whatever's happening, I'm constantly thinking, how is my character feeling about this right now? And how would they respond if something were to go wrong? I don't know. In games I've played, something always goes wrong. So it's just
Right. It wouldn't be D&D if it didn't go completely wrong.
precisely. So I'm like, okay, how is they going to respond if this goes horribly wrong?
Right. The plan is to go in that door and pick up that pie. Who summoned that demon?
Yep. Where did it come from? I don't know. Who knows? They like it. There's so much to it. We'll be here forever. I'm sorry. I'll give someone else.
I'm also not surprised that out of the cast of Critical Role, you connected with the fellow who is basically confirmed to be a centuries-old vampire. It's very fitting for you. Jesse, would you like to go next?
Well, did you just admit something here? I have to go call my friend Van Helsing.
Crossbow man?
I start with a stupid voice and then I work backwards from there. That's how I make characters.
Really?
Awesome.
Do you really?
I love that.
Sometimes. But no, it's sort of kind of similar to what Ryan said. I've never made a character that wasn't mechanically not optimized, but at least mechanically viable. I've never done the half orc wizard thing. But I've also never done that on purpose.
Mhm.
So, I've never purposefully sat down and gone, how can I min-max this guy to be the best fighter that he can be? I just tend to, especially for one-shots, because you don't want to be kind of rolling crappy on a one-shot if it's your only chance to play the character. I will think about mechanics, but I tend to start with either an idea in my head based on something I've seen in other fiction that I want to try and get inside and emulate, or an inspiration that is purely acting roleplay based. So I never really had interest in playing a forge cleric, for example, and then I saw the forge master from The Mandalorian. I thought, that's forge cleric. There it is, right there. I want to play that character, and now I have a forge character idea percolating in my head. So it's not to say everything I play is just something I've seen on TV, but a lot of it is, you take inspiration from other media that you consume, and that's often how I get a lot of vocal choices I make when creating other characters, even as an actor. And then sort of from there, I would be like, okay, well, if I have an idea for who this character is, how would I best express that character using the D&D system? So if I have an idea for this, Inigo Montoya Blade Master kind of swashbuckler dude, I make him a sword bard, or do I make him a rogue swashbuckler, or do I make him a battle master, or some weird hybrid of all three? So yeah, I will get into the nitty gritty mechanics, but it always starts from an idea of the character inspiration that I have.
And you touched on something very interesting there, and this is a good tip for newer role players as well. And I don't want to call Jesse a new role player by any means, but the idea that you kind of think of a character in media that is interesting to you and has a story that also is intriguing, and then trying to build a character
100%.
that emulates that is a great way to learn how to role play. And
Bad artists copy, good artists steal.
1000%.
And as you kind of take that character and bring it into your own story, you'll create your own character that has that flavor. Like in a recent campaign,
Even if you make a Monster Hunter Ranger and call him Gerald of Riverist, like, can be the most carbon copy thing. But the fact that it's thanks. But the fact that it's you doing it will make it a different character. You will naturally make different choices. And if you allow the events of the game to shape where the character goes, it could start off as the most derivative. Like that, the necromancer I have is basically, what if Edgar Allan Poe actually raised the dead? That's literally how that character started. His name is Edgar. He's a necromancer. He has a pet raven. Like, it's the most derivative possible thing you can think of. That character has grown and changed based on events that has happened to it. And so, other than the name and the raven, you wouldn't really look at him and go, oh, that's just Edgar Allan Poe.
That's an interesting example, because Edgar Allan Poe isn't an individual I often think of.
You tend not to think of him and D&D in the same,
It'd be more like Bard for me.
So here's the thing with me is that I've been playing D&D for like nearly 10 years now, and I'm still really not very good at the rules of the game. So mechanics, I'm not sure I ever really think of them when I'm making a character. It's like 100%. I'm just like, who's this going to be? And we just, like you're saying, it either comes from a character or from, I don't know, just an idea I've had in my brain. And then it's only after I've like kind of fleshed out the character that you're like, okay, now how does this fit into D&D? Okay, it's kind of like a sorcerer. Cool. We'll do a half sorcerer, half fighter. That seems fair. So yeah, it's like the planning comes in much later. And it's mostly me going to my friends and being like, okay, here's the character. What am I going to do in D&D to make this happen? That's a lot of how my D&D sessions go, my character creation goes.
I find that one of the more fun parts, just being able to, like, how do I create the vision in my head using the stuff in the book, I think there's this weird, like, taboo sometimes in the culture about, straight ripping off characters from media. But, like, I don't know, if there are new players listening to this, I say go for it.
Especially in D&D, when it's just for fun and you're just like hanging out with your friends. Absolutely.
There's nothing copyrighted about it. Like, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Like you're not trying to professionally, do this.
And like Teni said, like the character's gonna change. Like you might think you're coming in with this character, or like, I guess like all of you said, but it's gonna change once you start playing and once you start realizing how they interact with the other characters and how they interact with this world. It's gonna be completely different.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the fact that D&D is a game where you are playing with other players who are also playing characters, they imprint on your character as well. Because, like, say you make your Slán Polo the scoundrel, even though that is clearly a Han Solo ripoff, you could be paired with somebody who's like...
Hey, man, sounds fun to me.
You could be paired with somebody who's like Spartan 117 from Halo, and then somebody else's Bubbles from the Powerpuff Girls. Like,
see, what I would pair with your Han Solo is a drunken master brewing dwarf called Brewbacca.
Now, why dwarf?
Yeah, I'll be here all night. They're hairy. I don't know. The idea of a short Chewbacca is funny to me.
And you know what? And that right there, you've already made a change to Chewbacca. You've made him short.
Right? And that's how I create characters, ladies and gentlemen.
There it
I
is.
go, what would be fucking hilarious?
Wow.
I once experimented with making a character that was very much so influenced by the party. It was a teenager. It was set in a Star Wars universe. His name was Tosh, and basically he was this little mechanic. He was like short for his age. He was basically, if I could conceptualize it, he was everybody's little brother. Um, and that's how I played the character. So when you get this group of people with various backgrounds and ways of handling things, our party was very neutral in that game. So it was interesting because we had everything from a Jedi all the way down to a guy who was like, "Hey, the Sith, cool guys," and I was like, well, "Okay then." I had a lot to work with, and playing a character that was like very much so influenced by everybody. That character, as certain players, got busy outside of the game, that left us with the people who were not so much light side based, and I ended up having the character, go down a path towards the dark side before the game stopped happening. It was one of those games that just stopped happening because people moved away. But it's a shame. I really like that character.
I think that's good advice for role players to bring not necessarily young characters or inexperienced characters. They don't have to be, but a character that is willing to adapt to circumstances and a character that is perhaps closer to the beginning of their journey than the end of their journey. So as an anecdote, like sometimes I DM a lot of one shots for new players. That's kind of my thing. And often I will get, I'll say to people like, come up with a little bit of backstory for your character. It can be as much or as little as you want, just something to give me ahead of time so I know kind of, the vibe you're going for. And there will be times where I will get like these essays about these characters. I had one guy give me like this 10-year history of who this character was. And I was like, okay, you've given me like a level 12 character in terms of story content here. You need to give me a level 1 character who can then grow and have all these things happen to them.
Yeah. And that's the easiest way to kind of get your character into a group as well. Cause I've played in plenty of games where it's like, the party meets in the bar and they want nothing to do with each other. And it's like, how do you get this group now to work together?
Are you describing the current campaign we're in?
This does pertain to the current campaign we're in. And the way I'm playing my character, like I kind of got the sense of the flavor of all the characters in the current campaign me and Dallis are playing in. And I was like, wow, these are all very selfish characters. I'm going to be the reverse of that. I'm going to be the friendly one, and I'm going to try and connect everybody. So even though I'd intended this character to come in every once in a while because I'm a busy person, I didn't know if I would have time for this game, but I've been to every session so far. I'm trying to kind of heavy-handedly keep the party moving in a direction.
We desperately need you.
I would play hard ass in this conversation then and say that as both a player and a DM, I don't like characters like that. Characters that are inherently selfish or that are like, well, why would I go on this adventure? Because to me, I just throw down my books. I'm like, all right, let's just play Snakes and Ladders then. Like the whole point is we agreed to do this thing, and the thing I have is an adventure. So I think, you can be reluctant and play the character like the Frodo Baggins that doesn't want to go to Mordor. But at the end of the day, there has to be, I think, this shared understanding of we know eventually we're going to go put the ring in the mountain. So
absolutely,
let's work towards that.
I think there's like some like humility you have to have coming into a game as well, where it's like, your character, but you have to be willing to compromise all the time, right? Like I was saying, like this character, there is a reason she's with the party, but there's been a lot of times where it's like the party is doing something that I don't think my character would do, and sometimes you just have to kind of put that aside and be like, we're gonna do it for the party. We're not gonna,
it's the sort of meta. Yeah, it's like the meta agreement of if I don't do this, then my character would leave. So I'm just gonna go home for the night. Like D&D's over, you know, and nobody wants that. Everyone wants to play for 12 hours.
And a lot of times you end up discovering like a reason to stay as well. If you just like go with it and agree to the party, you do end up finding that reason to be here. But sometimes you have
I think if you give your character hooks into...
Yes, and.
Yeah, exactly. If you give your character hooks, you're just doing yourself a favor, right? Like I like to think of the sort of inciting incident rule when I'm building a backstory. Like my character was born, they lived a nice life as a farmer or whatever, a thing happened, and now they're an adventurer, and that's kind of it. And then I always tie the hook back to the thing that happened. Like my wife was stolen by goblins, so now I'm going off and killing goblins. And the DM says, hey, I got this goblin killing adventure. You meet in a tavern and there's some goblins to kill. Perfect.
To comment on that, yes, I agree with everything you guys said. That was fantastic. I like to basically say, look, the player's handbook is a book made for creating adventurers. It doesn't say make a commoner. It says make an adventurer. You're not playing a commoner. If you wanted to play a commoner, I got an engine for you. It's called Warhammer 4th Edition. But you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, and you're playing an adventurer. You're playing someone who's out there to, do some good or some bad or whatever your campaign is.
I think if I could quote, it was, I believe, Marisha and Liam from Critical Role had a conversation on Twitter about this, where they said, how come everyone's backstories are always orphaned kids with no parents? And Liam says, hey, do you want to leave your successful vineyard and healthy relationship and come kill dragons? Fuck no.
Right.
Perfect.
Perfect. That is actually a great example. And you kind of touched on it too, Jesse. It's like when you think of what is it, the typical hero's journey or something, it starts off with there's a change, something drastic that forces
the call to adventure.
The call to adventure, that's right. And you could have been a commoner, but what changed drastically to make you live a comfortable life, forcing you into danger?
Most of my characters were commoners before the thing happened, or common enough, like even the wizards. It's like, okay, I was a wizard's assistant for like a low level, I wasn't learning mind bending, whatever. And then he got swallowed up by the void, and now I have to go find him or whatever. Like I always try and start them as basic as possible to just give myself room to get, as we said, ear touched by a mind flare.
Oh, sorry to jump back a bit, guys.
Mhm.
I just remembered a couple of things about what I do when I make a character.
Oh, great.
One, I always try to give them a weird quirk or like a weird little thing. Like I had a character who just couldn't read. Again, you played that.
Yeah.
That was Chance. He couldn't read. Could not read. And despite him having like a 14 intelligence, he just was never taught how to read. And that ended up becoming part of his character. It was like him trying to, look for someone who would teach him how to read. And then also another way to go about it is like I take a trait for myself or something I've experienced. So like when I made Tosh, I was like, well, I was the little brother in real life. Let's explore this further in a character. And then I base the concept character around that idea. So maybe I choose a part of myself, like, I don't know, eccentric. And then I make a character who's very eccentric. And then I base the story around this very eccentric individual, and I put them through a little bit of stuff because they're only level 1. So then, and then that's it. I start with something real small, and then it just builds.
Quirks tend to default to fears, like weird, irrational ones. Like my barbarian has fought a dragon head to head, is terrified of wolves. Wolf killed his sister and blah blah blah. So it's like fighting a CR1 half wolf will scare the crap out of this level 10 adventurer. Just to me, I don't know. There's something interesting with characters that are afraid of weird stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Or they have manias, things they're obsessed with.
Yep. Or vices.
Yep.
But then again, I guess these kind of things kind of blend in between personality quirk and flaw. What are your guys' thoughts on flaws for characters?
I was going to say you should throw some flaws on your character as well. Yeah.
I mean, it's never is a character perfect, and if they are, that might be their flaw. Because how is a perfect individual?
That they think they are.
Oh, it might be egotistical. If they do seem to be perfect, they might not be able to relate with common people. They might have a superiority complex.
I find that my flaws tend to
Your personal
be connected to the other traits in that way. I have a lot of personal flaws. But yeah, like okay, so this character's afraid of wolves. Well, I can use that as a flaw. He runs away from wolf-based combat and stuff like that, or taking vices and things. And I always tend to think of flaws as, how can I take this trait to the sort of like worst possible way, in a way that is dangerous to the character. I mean, not as literally physically dangerous, but something that will affect their growth. They then need to learn to get over.
Yeah. flaws are also an opportunity for us as players to kind of set us up for a story trajectory. Like, to get over a flaw is an easy way to show character growth.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think they should
Mhm.
change. I think a lot of traits should. I've played with characters that haven't. I'm not saying I'm a perfect role player, but I've played with players who haven't ever changed their characters in a meaningful way, and it's gotten kind of stale. So there's one where it's like, oh, my character is he hates people and doesn't talk to people. It's like, well, that's great, but that severely limits our ability to interact with the world. So maybe they start that way. Maybe an NPC saves their life, and suddenly they love the people in this one town.
Another system I played in was called Shadowrun, which is kind of a cyberpunk fantasy mix. And I just wanted to talk about a character I played in that game. This was kind of a stupid character, but I played him seriously. His flaw was, well, he was the party's face. He was a master of disguise. However, his flaw was he would, no matter what role he was playing, he would always wear a purple suit. So he was incredibly recognizable, and yet somehow
He was Prince,
Hmm.
basically.
yeah, kinda. But he would always get away with his disguises somehow, despite being the man in the purple suit.
Man in the purple suit, coming soon to HBO.
That's right. I'm wondering, do you guys, as actors, it's not uncommon for actors to do a bit of
Professional actors.
Oh,
Thank you.
it's not uncommon for professional actors to put some research into the roles that they're stepping into. Do you guys do that?
Sure about that?
Well, maybe from
Do you
what?
do that?
Oh.
No.
Casting
No.
directors, turn away now.
Never.
Okay.
I think it depends. It depends on the role, I think.
Yeah.
Well,
I've watched way too many movies in my life. And like if I want to play a character that's in the vein of indie, like Indiana Jones, yeah, I've seen all those movies countless times, except for the fourth one. I've seen that twice. Wasn't
I
as
only saw it once, and I was fine with that.
Yeah, me too. For the first three, seen them lots. So yeah, I got more than enough. And then I don't know. I also just, if I'm making a character that's wholly original, I just make it up as I go. I don't know. I like it. I like flying by the seat of my pants. It's fun.
I would kind of a similar and slightly more facetious answer by saying, if I have to do a lot of research, that's too much work for me.
For a role or for
This-
a D&D character?
For a D&D character. I know, it's sort of like in terms of researching like an accent or something. It's like, well, this is a game that I'm playing to have fun. I'm gonna stick with stuff that like I know, stuff that I'm familiar with. But yeah, if it's an actual role, I mean, absolutely, that's just part of the job. And I think because it's part of my job, it makes me less wanting to have to do that in my hobby, because I do enough of that on the daily anyway. I'm not going to pick some weird Lithuanian subset culture to model my wizard on. I'm just going to say he's Irish and he doesn't sleep.
Yeah, no, I think I would agree with this as well. I mean, it depends. It kind of depends on what you talk about in terms of research, though. Like, to be honest, like when I'm prepping a D&D character, I probably put like 3 weeks worth of work into prepping that character. Like, I'm like filling out like questionnaires. I'm designing the character. Like, I spent a lot of time like thinking through like every aspect of that D&D character. And I don't think for a lot of roles you need to go into that deep of a state with a lot of the roles I've done, at least. So yeah, like if it's a specific accent or there is a specific vibe that they're going for. Sometimes in like casting docs, I'll see like a reference to another voice or something. Like I'll go look up that voice actor or that performance and base it off of that. But I don't know where I was going with this, but I do research for both, but they're different kinds of research. Yeah, like I would not go figure out a whole new accent for a D&D character. Never. Not
I think it was a
chance.
Sanford Meisner quote where he said, how is knowing your character's blood type going to get you out of the dressing room?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, that's fair.
I don't know. I feel like, especially D&D, where no one is writing writing lines for me and no one's writing like specific situations for me, and I have to be prepared for any situation, for anything to happen. I need to know this character more deeply to know.
But I think
how this is
it's
gonna work.
also valid to then say that if you're listening to this and you think, well, I like doing all that work, then absolutely do that, because it's such a like this so much of this game. It's even written in the book, or it's like, if you don't like the way this rule is, just do whatever the hell you want. So if you decide that you're going to spend an entire year doing mood boards for your sorcerer, then hey, absolutely.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Character creation is my favorite part of the game. So.
Oh, I agree. I love making characters. Making characters.
I bought Baldur's Gate 3 just for the character creator.
Oh,
I have some questions about Baldur's Gate 3's character creation with regards to the Warlock, because he has no dex, but he's called the Blade of the West or something.
All their pre-generated characters are absolute crap.
Yeah, he wields a rapier, and he has 9 dex. What?
I mean, their trickery cleric has no dex either, and all of her abilities are like supposed to be stealth advantage. Like, come on.
yeah, I don't know, man. I'm confused. Oh,
That's a whole nother episode.
listen here, buddy. I can talk to you all day about clerics. The cleric cannot use their advantage to stealth on themselves. They're only beneficial to anyone around them. Oh,
That's
God
true.
damn trickery clerics.
Danny knows a thing or two about trickery clerics.
Yeah.
But specifically in the game, though, the way they do the spell is you just cast it on whatever. So you
Right.
can cast. I believe you can cast it on yourself in the game.
Of course, in Baldur's Gate 3, which I have not experienced. Yeah, it would
That's on. Yeah, their pre-gen characters are.
it would be unfair to compare it to D&D proper.
I was gonna say, one of the other things I think that differentiates like how I approach a D&D character versus a character that I'm voicing is that when I'm like voice acting, like the voice is the thing I bring to the character, right? So I think I do put more effort into figuring out like their tone and their cadence and their accent, because it's like it's the thing I get to do for this character. Whereas with D&D, there's so many aspects that I feel like I'm bringing to a character that I'm not so particular on, exactly what their voice might sound like. So I got all this other stuff.
Yeah.
You're viewing it through more than just one lens, right?
Yeah.
When I start a character, sometimes like I'll just write the concept down that I have, because I maybe I haven't even thought of a backstory yet for this character, and I'll show up to the session with like sort of a blank slate, but like something that's very open. Like basically, I sometimes I'll sit down to a session, I won't have a single word written for a backstory, but the moment the session starts, mentally, I'm like, okay, how am I going to play this character? What do I want to do with this guy? I'll come up with the voice, and then I'll interact with a few people, and I'm like, interesting. And I'll jot down a few notes during the session. And then after the first session, I'll begin writing the backstory. And I'll be like, hey, DM, after playing my character for like a few hours, this is what I would like their backstory to be. Is that okay? And now that I know a little bit about the world too, I can sort of, insert myself into it a little easier.
I tend to do that for coming up with alignment and specifically the like traits, flaws, like the stuff on the character sheet. Sometimes even the voice. I'll be like, well, I don't really know their alignment or personality until I've actually interacted with people. I know their backstory in terms of they were a commoner who blah, 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 but the sort of specifics on how I'm going to play them, I often don't know until I start playing them.
Yep.
That's a great point. Yeah.
I think that's just the improviser in me.
Playing D&D has forced me to get better at improvisation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm garbage at improv, and D&D has helped me a lot.
I find that hard to believe.
It is long form improv with rules. Like that's what it is.
Yep.
So, what kind of knowledge do you guys think is important for anyone to become a good role player?
State capitals.
I feel like we've been talking about this the entire time.
It
Yeah.
truly is. But how would you kind of sum it up? Like, what is, if you could give somebody a single grain of your D&D wisdom, what piece of information would you give them?
Know the kind of things that you like and what you like about them. So, why do you gravitate towards a specific movie character or whatever? Like, what is it about that character that really turns your crank? Then you can put traits like that into what you're playing.
Right. So character archetypes.
Yeah, I'm not sure you would all agree with me as much, but I would say like know your character. Like I said, like I've done those like answer 50 questions about your character kind of things, and I find doing things like that. My computer's going crazy. I find doing things that like I find doing things like that help me like think through the different scenarios that this character might go through and helps me like develop like those quirks and those flaws to a character. If I start thinking about like, what was their worst childhood memory, and I think about like the time their sister like pranked them and stole all their stuff and whatever. And now I'm very possessive of my things and I don't want people to touch them. Like there's a lot of like those like behind the scene quirks that can manifest themselves in a current character.
I absolutely agree with that. I think different players have different means of prepping their characters, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want to take all that time, go for it. Absolutely. 100% do it. My little tidbit is to have an open mind and allow your characters to grow and change, allow them to fail, let them lose, let them win. Like at the end of the day, a D&D game and a character's life is not any different from anybody else's life. People are going to fail, people are going to succeed, and they're going to learn things and they're going to change because of it. So just like let it happen. If you roll a natural one, let it happen. Enjoy it. Make it awesome. You can always make it awesome. That's my tidbit. You can always make it awesome.
That is basically what I was going to say. Yeah.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Characters aren't, I mean, they're created kind of in a vacuum, but they don't exist in a vacuum. They exist because of things that happen to them and people they interact with. So I think a good piece of advice that also goes for acting is just if you're listening to the people around you and listening to the events and reacting to them, you're going to be a good role player. I think a lot of first-time role players are sort of like, but I'm not an actor or I've never done it before, so I don't know what to do. And it's like, well, you've played pretend before as a kid. You've joked around with your friends and done dumb comedy bits at the bar. So you're just basically doing that, but within a system that someone else came up with. There's nothing special about this compared to any other type of make-believe you do. So if you have an idea that you espouse at the table and decide that your orc walks into the bar and orders a beer, you are role-playing. That's really all it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And for people who don't want to, earn an Oscar for their D&D performance, like people who just want to play, role play and just have a good time, play a character, but not get super into it like an actor would. Totally cool. Like it's playing this game doesn't demand you, study acting for a few years. It's not a
very low stakes environment, and it should be with the right table.
Yes. So don't feel that you need to get into the game. It is a very welcoming atmosphere. If you've got a great table of people, they'll be open to if you're nervous, they'll hopefully I guess help you and sort of overcome your nerves, and maybe you'll improve your public speaking skills while you're at it. Yeah, that's what I've done, at least. Like I just taught a few people how to play in a recent campaign I ran. Sorry, grammar's funny. Yeah, like one of them was super into like getting into their character, and the other one was like, I am terrified of playing another human being. And I was like, you know what? Totally fine.
And it's kind of fun.
I'll help you.
Yeah, and it's kind of fun to have a mix of players at the table as well, right? You don't all need to be huge deep into your characters. I feel like the group I play with are not all huge deep role players. Some of them are much more like mechanics based, and that's super fun as well for me, especially as someone who doesn't know the rules of the game, to play with people who do. And it's very exciting to see like what you can do with characters from like other perspectives.
Mm-hmm. And I think the kind of bit of wisdom I'll give, and this is regardless of whether you're a practiced role player or one who is starting out. Be sensitive to the other players at the table, because when it comes to role playing, your character is your creation, and so you're of course going to be like, I love my character, but know that every player at your table also deeply loves their character, or at least hopefully they do. If they don't, they might need to make another character, but they like when you're role playing, just be sensitive to the fact that if you hurt their character, like emotionally, or in game like PvP, I try and disallow that at the table unless my role players are great at it. But you're essentially attacking another player's identity in a way. So try and work together with your other players. Make sure that you're talking to them, that you're not upsetting them. And yeah, this is less about like technique of roleplay and more about roleplay as a group dynamic.
I think that also touches back to something that Ryan brought up a while ago about a DM setting the example for the expectation. In a session 0, that's the kind of thing the DM really has to lay down. Like, this is how I role play. This is how I would like you to. Here are the sort of do's and don'ts. I've really only had 2 groups that I've sort of been okay with allowing some player versus player stuff, because I trusted that it was for a reason. It was pushing the story along in a way that made sense, and that everyone at the table knew that it wasn't personal, and it wasn't like I hate you as a person. It was just like, no, my character's pissed at your character for this reason. And yeah, so I think to Ryan's point about like setting the expectation, the DM has a lot of responsibility when it comes to the effectiveness of the role play of the table.
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
Yeah, I totally agree with that as well. I think on a separate but related tangent to this, I think it's also good to remember, like you were saying, Denny, like that everyone here has a character that they love and they've built, and everyone should have the opportunity to like shine with that character. And building a character that you love, just make sure that you're making sure that everyone else also gets to have like the great character moments that you want to have, and like make sure you're letting other people contribute to the table as well.
A good scene partner.
Yep.
Yeah. And a kind of story on this topic. I mentioned I DM'd a campaign. Ryan ended up being a part of it, and he joined us later. And there was a night where all of our players, I think we had about 6 or 7 people in the party. And everyone was like, tonight we're going to take it easy. We'll have a drink of wine with the game. And everyone got a bit buzzed, more than I'd anticipated. And then some PvP broke out, which was great.
Those are the best.
Which was great. A great moment in the story. But one of the players summoned bees, and then Ryan's character went down, and the player who's like, "Oh no, I guess I'm accidentally going to kill Ryan," and I'm like, I made sure that he understood the mechanics of what he was doing and that he could call off the bees, because I know Ryan loved his character. I'm like, we can make sure that we're still all going to have a good time, despite
Yeah.
Were you guys role playing an episode of Arrested Development? It's got bees.
Yeah, that I was so stressed.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we're all here to just tell a story together, right?
Yeah.
So it's not fun. We're all here as a group. We're all here together. We're all doing the same thing.
Yeah. I don't like fighting my teammates. I'm so scared because I don't want to hurt them. But they want to hurt me sometimes. But yeah, in terms of character death, I'm totally cool with it. But I think that session was like the second or first session I played that character, and he almost got whacked right away.
So, how would you guys feel about moving on to a little game?
Let's do it.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's get her done.
So,
Oh, I know you're not making funny faces at us behind that camera if we can't see you.
well,
just flipping us off the whole time.
And nobody would know. Thankfully, this is a podcast.
Exactly.
Who are they going to believe?
Yep.
You, the guest, a professional actor?
Who are you going to believe? Me or your own eyes?
That's right.
We pretend to be other people for a living. Who are they going to trust?
Professional liar.
Well, so
Oh boy.
I am going to be playing a new game with my guests here today. They've got a limited amount of questions. The topics are going to be pertaining to tabletop role-playing and D&D. This is D20 Questions. All right, guys. So, as you might have already guessed, is just 20 questions with a D&D flavor. I'm going to...
What?
That's right. I'm going to be choosing
Wow.
something from it could be a type of NPC. It could be a rule from the player's handbook, a monster, a magic item, or
You telling us the category, or
I'm just saying it could be from amongst these things. You could still ask about the category, but I'm not going to be like
Okay.
it's something from a module, for example. I'm not going to choose any specific.
that makes it harder.
Maybe I could choose a module. I don't know. But so I have something selected. You guys have 20 questions amongst yourselves. You could decide between you what questions you want to ask. But at the end of the 20 questions, you can each make a guess of the thing that I have chosen. And depending on how quick this goes, maybe we can do a second round. Whoever wins can choose the thing of the next round.
Oh, so 20 questions among us all, or 20 questions each?
Among you all as a group.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's cooperative
Okay.
up until the very end.
That's right.
Yep.
When it suddenly becomes combative. I feel like one of the questions we should ask should be about like which book it's found in.
Ooh, that would narrow it down.
'Cause I feel like Denny would know like the page number of the book that it's on.
You know, I very well might. But I should also mention that the question you ask me, I can only answer either yes or no.
And you're not going to tell us what category it is.
Nope. You can ask me if it belongs in that category, but
All right.
I'm not gonna tell you right off the hop.
Okay. Who feels lucky? Who's going to guess the category right?
I'll take a guess. Let's chop a really big one out. Is it a monster?
Yes.
Nice.
Okay.
Good guess. My knowledge goes down to
Okay.
near nothing.
I really want to narrow down like the source. I was going to say, is it in the monster manual?
Yes, it is.
Does it walk on 4 legs?
Yes.
Is it above CR 8?
Give me a moment while I look up that answer.
Oh, come on. You didn't know that off the
Yeah,
top.
I messed up in this regard.
It's a 4-legged lich centaur.
Okay, and you asked if it was above CR4?
Oh, 8.
If it was above CR.
Can I change my question?
My
I kind of want to say 4 now, just because that's the one you said. But
interesting. The answer is no.
Okay.
oh, it's not above CR8. Okay,
It's CR8 and below.
4-legged thing in the monster manual is below CR8.
And also, I'm of course
Hmm.
trusting you guys not to look up any monster.
Oh, what? It's not open book?
no,
Yeah,
but I
monster.
was flipping through the monster manual earlier, so I'm like trying to in my head remember the pages.
That's totally
Is the
fine.
creature a beast in terms of type? Is it a beast?
No.
How many questions is that? 4?
That was your 5th.
Does this creature have fur?
No.
Is this creature dragon type?
No.
Is this
With the
creature
dogs, yeah.
is this creature a fiend?
No.
Is this creature associated with some particular element? Does that even make sense? I'm like, is it a snowy thing?
I see what you
Is
mean.
it a
It's a
Should-
fire
rocky
dog.
thing?
Should I rephrase this to be, is it like elemental?
Yeah, sure. Let's go with that.
Not necessarily, because elemental is a creature type.
Well, and that's
Unless
kind
that's
of
what
what
we
I'm
intended.
kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
I don't know what I mean, so we could go with that. Yeah.
Sure. If that's the question, then no.
Okay.
Ooh,
So right now we've
um,
narrowed it down to it's a monster with 4 legs.
it's not a beast. It's not a fiend.
We know what it isn't.
It's not elemental. What was there? Was
It's not a
another one.
flump. That's about the only thing that I've figured out. now.
It's definitely not a flump. You know what? I'm gonna go for the creature that is like the ultimate cool guy creature to whip out at a table. As a DM, and your players will never suspect it. Is it? Oh, I can't remember the name of it. Is it one of those displacer beasts? That's what
I was
they're
gonna
called.
say he better say displacer beast, or else I'm gonna be pissed.
Is it a displacer beast?
No.
Damn it!
Oh,
They're my
Okay.
favorite minis too.
I'm adding a caveat rule.
They don't have 4. They don't have 4 legs. They have
So-
like 6 legs and tentacles.
So I'm adding a caveat rule here. So you can use one of your questions to prematurely guess, and it will count as one of the questions. But once all the 20 questions are gone, you guys get one free guess at choosing it. And I'll deem
How many
who's...
questions are we at right now?
Right now, you have just finished question 10.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, jeez.
man.
Oh, boy.
What are the other types? What are the other types of creature?
Aberration, giant, celestial. It's not beast. Okay, is it aberration type?
No.
I was gonna say they tend not to have 4 legs. They tend to have like
8 tentacles.
Does it have horns?
No.
Does it speak a language that PCs could speak?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So it probably isn't sentient.
Interesting.
What are the creature types?
The fact that it's not beast type is what's tripping me up, because everything I'm thinking of is like, oh no, that's a
Sure.
beast.
If you guys want to look up the monster types, I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what the types of monsters are. So we've said a fiend, we've said elemental, we've said dragon, we've said beast, we've said aberration.
Given that he said 4 legs, I'm loath to assume that it's humanoid.
It could be a fae or a humanoid.
Fae. All the fae, like bestial kind of things I can think of have fur, though.
That's true. Yeah, it's definitely not a celestial. Celestials are whack. They're so overpowered.
If it's a fucking quadrone, like I'm just gonna be pissed.
You know what? Is it a
4 limbs.
construct? Is it a construct?
No.
Okay.
That was question 14.
Okay.
It is
Oh
just
god.
nothingness.
Oh, it's an ooze or a plant or an undead.
But it has 4 legs.
Ooze do ooze have legs?
Right?
Is that how that works?
No, that's. I'm just going by what we haven't said. We haven't said fae.
Fae, a giant, which it probably isn't. It's either fae, humanoid, plant, or undead, or monstrosity.
Oh yeah, the other
Ooh.
category.
You know what? I think, you know what? Okay. All right. I think it's a monstrosity. Let's ask. I'm asking.
Do it.
Is it a monstrosity?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
Right.
yes.
You've got
What the hell
5
are monstrosities?
Did this solve it for you? I haven't
I
learned
think so.
anything since question 3.
I know of a couple of monstrosities that are. Oh, ask some questions.
No,
Sorry.
not that I haven't asked them. We're learning things. I'm just not getting closer to knowing what it is.
So it's a monstrosity. Okay, cool. That narrows it down.
Problem is,
fair bit.
monstrosity isn't specific enough in my brain for me to think, oh yeah, it's that thing.
It's below
'Cause I
CR8
always-
though. Or
Yeah.
it's CR8 and below. Yeah. So that chops like at least 60% of the monstrosities out. Because all monstrosities are pretty beefy.
I can't think of any of them.
And it has
I guess I don't
4
know
legs.
monstrosities enough.
I have one guess so far. Though I'm not sure if it's right. And if it's wrong, I'm in trouble.
We could
You say
say,
go for it, because
Well.
I'm coming up blank here.
yeah, it's true, I guess.
I'll use a question. Does it have a shell
No.
or armor of some kind?
No.
Okay. So my answer was going to be wrong.
Let me confirm that. Because I believe typically
It's an armadillo.
yeah.
It's a yeth hound wearing a breastplate.
Hmm.
We might be pooped on this one.
Yeah, looking at the image of the creature, no, it does not have a shell or protective armor.
The only ones that I can think of, I'm not sure if they're monstrosities, so I'm hesitant to guess them. Do they have tails?
Let me ask you a question. Do you mean to ask if they have multiple tails or do they have a tail?
Well, I meant like tail in general, or are they
Okay.
generally tailless?
Right. So for the question, does it have a tail? Yes.
Okay.
3 questions left. Dallis just turning away.
I'm just going to go over here.
4 legs.
4 legs, a tail, 2 nipples, a butt. I have just described the Loch Ness Monster.
We've done it.
Would you guys like a hint for your last 3 questions?
Yes.
I mean, like, yes, but also my pride says no. So
Well, You can
I'll
choose
just
to
say
not
whatever
accept
everyone
it.
else says.
Plug your
You
ears.
say the hint, and I will plug my ears and go la 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 la.
Okay. Its
I'll take
typical
it.
environment is a swamp.
Ugh,
Hangs out in swamps.
Shrek.
damn.
Swamps?
Or more appropriately, aquatic, I suppose.
So it swims, maybe?
4 legs monstrosity hangs out in swamps.
Swamps.
It's how it's spelled.
How it's
English is
pronounced.
funny.
I just have no idea, man.
No, me neither.
All I can think of right now are hydras, but God, they're not CR8, that's for sure.
We have no questions, do we?
I think we still have 3 more questions. We just have to think of
You
them.
have 3 questions. Yeah.
How many heads does it have?
It's not a yes
I can
or no
only answer
Just
yes or
a
no.
yes or no question.
Oh,
For a hydra, he'd just say yes.
does it have more than 1 head?
Yes.
I'd like to answer.
You could use a question.
I'm fine with
Is it a chimera?
Oh,
No.
Oh,
it does have more than 1 head? Because I don't think they're beasts. Is it a hellhound? The 2-headed dog thing?
No. That is all of the questions. So now,
And those are probably fiends or something, aren't they?
if everyone wants to give me an answer, I'll deem who is closest. So let's start with Ryan.
okay, so it's not a chimera. It's not a displacer beast.
Or if you want a moment to think about it, if somebody else has an answer ready.
And we did ask if it was in the monster manual, right? And you did say yes.
That is correct.
So it's not Volos or Mordenkainen.
So it's not a Catoblepus. And what it could have been?
I've never heard that word before.
It's quite the
You
word.
probably Catoblepus is an interesting creature.
Is it?
And it doesn't have a shell, so it's not a bullet.
No, I got to guess. Is it
Okay.
Go ahead.
a 2-headed, shellless turtle that walks on all 4 legs?
A one horn flying purple people.
You know what, Dallas? Very close, but that's humanoid.
Shucks.
Good
So
guess.
close.
Oh yeah, true. You said it was aquatic. Why did I say chimera?
Yeah, so why did I
Hmm.
say hellhound? All right, well, my guess is just, even though I'm pretty sure they're beasts, I don't know, dire crocodile. Yeah, that's a monstrosity because it's dire.
No, it is not a dire.
Let's go with a giant. Oh wait, no, it doesn't have a shell, so it's not a turtle. That's fine.
It's a kraken.
Oh god, I don't know. I was gonna say bullet, but I don't know, man.
You better tell us before we have an aneurysm.
Well, I gotta wait for Ryan's guess.
I'm gonna die. I'm sorry.
Say Hydra.
I'll do it. Yeah, Hydra. I don't have anything. All of my guesses are moot. I'll say Hydra.
I don't know if you guys can see that.
Whoa!
Hydra.
Hydras walk on 4
Can't say
legs?
anything, what?
Or hydras
It's
have 4
Hydra.
legs?
Was it Hydra the whole
It
time?
was Hydra.
Oh, I get partial marks for bringing it up.
If
then.
Ryan didn't guess it, I was gonna say Jesse won, but wow.
Hydra.
And
Hydras are CR8?
Hydras are CR8 on the dot.
Wow. I've even run them before, and I was sure they were like at least 10.
For the listeners out there, we're talking about CR. So with monsters, they have what's called a challenge rating, and that's a number that kind of gives DMs an idea of how strong a monster is, just so you're in the loop. But
Also known as something that most DMs ignore.
it's true. Ryan, would you like to run a game of D20 questions as the winner?
Oh, yes.
More than
Right now?
anything. Danny just wants to play.
I figured this would be a shorter game, and I think actually it probably took about as long as I needed it to. But yeah, I'll admit I'm into the fun.
Yeah, come join us.
So it was fun being the one with the question.
Okay, so it can be anything from a rule to an ability to a creature, right?
So rules
An
from the
item.
player's handbook, type of NPC,
What does that even mean?
So like archetypes, like a king or an assassin.
Oh God. This is very general. So any word in the English language is what we're guessing right now.
Well, D&D themes, like you can't say super soldier.
I could play a super soldier in D&D. Don't tell me what I can or cannot play.
I am bad DM.
Oh, it's so cool. All right. Anyways, I got it.
Very cool.
Is it cool?
No, don't count that. Oh.
I mean, I guess. Is it a monster?
No.
Okay. Just got
Is
much
it-
harder.
A class?
No, it is not.
Is it living?
Define living.
Has to check. Okay.
I suppose I can rephrase it too. Is it biological?
No.
Sorry.
Biologically?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean? No.
Okay.
Is it an item?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it a weapon?
That's why I figure you had to check, right? Sentient items.
Oh, Dallas, can you repeat that?
Is it a weapon?
Yes.
Is it sentient?
No.
It's not Black Razor.
I don't know. When you said it's not a Hydra.
Yeah, maybe I just accidentally get all of them. That's my secret power, guys. I'm accidentally a genius. Okay, it's a weapon item, not sentient.
Is it a magical item?
Oh, I
Yes.
believe we already asked that.
Oh, I thought we just knew it was a.
No, I just said, is it an item? That's all I said.
Oh, did you? Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know why I just.
So it could be, dagger.
Yeah, it is a magical item.
Magic item.
That's
Okay.
number 7.
Is it a class restricted item?
Yes.
Okay. So like Holy Avenger or something like that.
Is it a type of sword?
Yes.
I'm going to use a question on a guess. Is
Do
it
it.
flame tongue?
No, it is not.
Is it a two-handed sword?
Probably doesn't say.
It doesn't
Hmm.
say.
Because a lot of the weapon magic items will say like any sword type. You could have a two-handed or one-handed. That's me metagaming there.
It's me proving that I don't know the rules of this game.
Yes, it is a any sword. Just because that's like a question that I can't really yes or no. Any.
Is it
Sorry, was that question 10? No, that was 11.
I'll just go for it. I think I'm getting the name right. Is it sun sword? What is it? What are they called? Sunblade? You know what I mean? The sun one. That one.
Yeah, I know what you mean. No, it's not.
Oh.
After all that.
Is it a rare or greater weapon?
Yes.
Okay. I asked that like it helped. I basically learned that it's not a +1 weapon.
Unless +1s are really rare in your campaign setting.
Oh, watch, it's like a +2 weapon.
It's a +2 dagger.
Wow.
I want to
Amazing.
guess like Vorpal sword, but I don't think those are class restricted.
Oh, right. It's class restricted.
Unless that's me just guessing Hydra again. The only other one I can think of is Holy Avenger, because I'm sure they're restricted to like paladins or whatever.
Probably. You should guess it.
Okay, is it a Holy Avenger?
Yes.
Hydra!
It is
See,
the
I
Holy
told
Avenger.
The Holy Avenger.
Oh,
Oh, that's fun.
that
That is a weapon I've never wielded, but I've always wanted to.
good to know.
Excellent.
Well, thank you
That was
guys for
fun.
playing D20 questions. That
That
was
was fun.
that was a lot more enjoyable than I honestly thought it was going to be.
I love 20 questions.
Teni's like, I thought it was gonna suck, but you guys were great.
I mean, it's interesting to try and find games that can be done over a like a video call. Like it's not an easy feat. And hopefully for the listeners at home, hopefully you enjoyed that as well. Now the next segment that I've got for us is one final question, and this is our chance to hear from the listeners. This is Question Dicely. And this question comes from a friend of mine and a fellow podcaster, Mackenzie Horner. Mackenzie writes, how can you, as a seasoned player, make D&D less daunting and more accessible? And I'm going to take a moment now to shout out his podcast, Before the Downbeat, a musical podcast. And I'll do a bit of a spiel at just after the outro of this episode as well.
I've never heard of this podcast, but I'm immediately intrigued.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you would like it. It's musicals, so and I know
Oh
you're
my
into
goodness.
musicals.
I'm very into musicals. I'm gonna have to go listen to this.
Links will be in the description.
Ah, how convenient.
Indeed. So, how can you guys make D&D less daunting and more accessible? Well, not you guys specifically. You know what I mean.
You can't.
It's
Yeah.
for us only.
No nerds allowed.
Only nerds allowed, I think.
I was gonna say the opposite of that.
What? I've been playing with a bunch of nerds.
One of us.
Of course.
I guess I would say the best way to make this game not as daunting at first, like no matter what you do, it's going to be daunting. But a pre-generated character of level 1, maybe ask the new player, like, hey, what kind of character would you like to play? Would you like to play someone who wants to cast a spell, or you want to play someone who runs around and smacks people? And they'll be like, I don't know, I want to play someone who smacks people. And you'll be like, all right, that's awesome. Here, I'll tell you what, I'll do all the hard work. I'll make you a character. Just mechanics wise, if you want to come up with their actual personality, that'll be fantastic. I'll get you set up character wise. And I'll teach you how to play with this pre-made character. And if you enjoy yourself, then I can talk to you about character creation, which is a lot.
I would agree with that.
Mhm.
As I said before, I run a lot for new players, and I find that that's successful depending on sort of like the player's personality. Some people come to it like, oh no, I want all the crunch, like give it to me right away. A lot of people are like, I just want to try it out, and I hate math, so I'll be like, great, I'll do the math for you. The thing that I found was sort of a barrier to it when I introduced it to my friends. Is we sat down on that first day and we all created characters together, which was great in terms of coming up with party composition and gelling the characters. But I could kind of tell a lot of them at the table were like, this feels like school, man. Like I'm just going through a book and copying things onto a piece of paper. Like I want to play the game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that, depending on the personality of the player, that could be a good thing to just kind of skip the rules in a way. And I find explaining them when they actually become important to the game. Like don't explain how combat works until the first combat starts.
Mm-hmm.
That could backfire, but it hasn't yet.
Yep. And again, like as a because you are running the game, presumably, right? You set the expectation right up front, like, hey guys, we're all learning here. We have new players at the table, so we're gonna be pausing and we're gonna say, hey, this is how this works. And that's okay. Don't worry about it. We're friends. We're hanging out. It's a good time.
You should be up front and so for the question, as the seasoned player, I think what's important is to talk to the newbie and just straight up say to them, do you want help if you're struggling with something, or do you want to figure it out on your own? Because some players I've had at tables, either as a player or as a DM, when they roll the die and they forget what they're adding to what, they're like, what do I do? What do I do? And the guy or girl next to them will be like, oh, it's this. You have to add that to that, and then you get that. And they're like, okay, great, thanks. But then some players are like, don't tell me. I want to figure it out on my own. They will actually get a little bit upset if someone is telling them what to do because they feel like they're sucking at it or they're somehow doing something wrong. So you have to just say to them, like, what do you want? Do you want help, or do you want me to just sit and watch and wait for you to talk to me?
Get to know your players. Communication, number one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the golden rule of D&D. Just talk to each other. Be upfront.
Pertains to life, really.
Yeah.
I'll just communicate it. It'd be a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Never steer you wrong.
Anybody got anything else on this point? Otherwise, I can bring us home with this.
Always make sure that if you're not the one bringing snacks, someone at the table is.
Always have snacks. Rule number 1.
Yep. If you're going to be taking people to, learn about things, it's good to feed them as well. I mean, typically, I know the custom is players buy snacks for the DM.
I was gonna say that's my unspoken rule.
But if you're bringing new players to the table, buy the snacks for new players.
And if you're not the one hosting, help tidy up after. Don't make the host do it all.
Yes, absolutely.
Of course, none of that makes any sense in the world of COVID, but
Someday.
Yeah.
someday, oh God, someday.
In terms of welcoming new players, maybe buy their food. You know, give them more than just "I'm going to learn today" as a reason to be there. Don't get me wrong, learning is amazing, but some people like food.
Yeah, that's a good
I
point.
like food. I can be bribed with food.
I think another thing to that can help make D&D be less daunting and more accessible is reassuring players. And Jesse did touch on this. Is if the seasoned player is in the role of the DM for this, and that's assuming that that's usually how it's going to go, is to reassure the players that you are there if they need help, and to let them know that it's going to be confusing for a while, but that's what the DM is there for, to help them if they so desire, and and that it's everybody's job to try and make sure that everyone has a good time. And probably be up.
I think
Go ahead.
keep the atmosphere light and the stakes low, because I mean, what may happen is you have a person who's like, hey, I want to try D&D. They come over, they try it for a night, they don't like it.
Mhm.
And it's just not for them. You know, maybe they want to try a different style of game, or they like the idea of role playing, but they don't like the numbers, and they just decide D&D is not for me. I'm going to try, you know, like we're going to play Risk or something else, you know. And I think it's important to like recognize that and not be pushy. I've had pushy players before, and that's not cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unavoidable that some players are likely not going to enjoy the specific experience of D&D, and as a seasoned player trying to get others into it, you'll have to accept that some won't buy in, and that's okay. They have different interests, and probably be upfront that the game's going to be a few hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Unless you're playing Tomb of Horrors and everyone dies.
Yeah.
Also,
I would say run a game that's a lot more lighthearted. Don't run a game that's so serious up front. If you're welcoming new players to the game, they're already worrying about mechanics, and they're going to be worrying about
start them on
game.
Curse of Strahd.
Yeah, no. Start them on just like an easy one shot. Like, you know, you hang out in town for a bit. You know, you get to role play a little bit, and then maybe have some like wacky situation come up where like maybe something gets stolen, and then people are like, uh-oh, and then they catch the dude who did it, and he's just like some dum whatever. And it's fun.
I don't overly plan, but I will overly plan the first few sessions for sure. Like,
Yes,
make sure there's a fun combat, make sure there's a good like NPC moment, make sure if everybody has backstory bits, touch on every single one of their backstories to make them feel included, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And in the odd situation where you're an experienced player amongst non-experienced players, try and engage those players either in roleplay to kind of see how they feel about it, and to kind of get that ball rolling. They might be uncomfortable, and if that's the case, they'll likely tell you, and then you'll be like, all right, how about Tommy across the table? I'll interact with him and see how he feels. But then again,
I've had that happen a lot, where people have like cool character ideas and bits they want to contribute, but they just don't know how to start. So it's like, hey, character, what do you think? I'm like, well, and then, you know, you're giving them, it's like an improv. You're making an offer for them. Is
there anything anybody else wanted to touch on? Because I think otherwise we're coming to the end of this podcast.
Oh
no. Someone think of something quick.
Run!
I don't want the session to end.
It was a Hydra.
Nobody expects the Spanish Hydra.
Nobody expects the Spanish Hydra.
Oh,
I would not expect that.
Well, I should mention to the listeners, if you want to submit a question to Question Dicely, send an email with your question to this address, dicelychannel@gmail.com. Include the letters QD at the start of your subject if you want your question to get read on the podcast here. And also let me know if you'd like to be shouted out. And if you have a social media handle as well, I'd be happy to promote you as well. But otherwise, I'd like to thank my guests for joining us on the Speak Dicely podcast. Do you have anything that you'd like to plug, or where can people keep up with you in terms of social media? Whoever'd like to go first.
You can find me on Twitter at Dallis the VA like voice actor, and Dallis is spelled Dallis because my parents wanted me to have to spell it out every single time I introduce myself to anybody ever. That's the best place to get in touch with me.
I mean, it's spelled the same way as the main antagonist in Divinity, so I'm good with that.
Is that the Hammer Girl?
Yeah.
Dallis the Hammer.
Yeah.
I think my nickname in one of our group chats is the Hammer because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Find me at actorjessebeam.com, where you can check out all of my stuff, all of my socials on there, and you can see the kind of crazy stuff I do in this city.
This city being Toronto.
Toronto.
We are Canadians.
Yeah. You can find me on Instagram at Ryan the Worthy. You can also find me on Instagram at the Fantastagram, which is for my Twitch stream. I might be converting to just Ryan the Worthy because that's my personal one, but
It's more worthy.
yeah. You can also find me on Twitch at the Fantastic Fiend. You can find me on YouTube at the Fantastic Fiend. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. So no matter what your social media of choice is, we've got you covered here.
You bet.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, these are fantastic people. Follow them, like their stuff. They're entertaining, and I hope that I'll be able to bring these guys back in another time soon because this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks so much for having
Yeah,
us.
blast.
Yeah.
Of course.
Excellent.
And I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in to Speak Dicely. My name is Teni Brant, and I hope to speak Dicely with you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Later.
If you have a taste for musical theater, check out the podcast Before the Downbeat, a musical podcast. Accompany hosts Mackenzie Horner and Autumn Smith as the two of them talk about musical shows, their societal impacts, and if certain shows still have a place in the modern age. You can listen to them on Spotify, Anchor.fm, Apple Podcasts, and more. The Speak Dicely podcast is produced by Teni Brant. The intro and outro music were created by Salik Brant. If you liked this content, be sure to subscribe to the Dicely D&D YouTube channel, and you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at DicelyDND. We'll see you next time on the Speak Dicely podcast.